The Memphis Grizzlies find a way to knock off the San Antonio Spurs in an improbable victory. No Cedric Howard, no John Morant, no Zach Edey, no problem. Memphis beats Victor Wembanyama in his return with the San Antonio Spurs, and they turn their attention almost immediately to the Phoenix Suns. It's a loaded edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, back with you after a few days away. So thankful to DeMichael Cole, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, but our co-host here on Locked On Grizzlies for holding down the fort while I was gone. I'm back with you the next couple of shows, and I am so excited to be talking Grizzlies basketball because, as you know, if you're an everydayer, the air is a little bit more sweet. The sun shines a little bit more brightly on the fans of the Memphis Grizzlies for an improbable victory for Memphis over the San Antonio Spurs. At this stage of the season, you'll take them however you can get them. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the #1 sports podcast network out there, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube, literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can hang out with us each and every time that an episode drops here on Locked On Grizzlies. We're so glad that you can join us and be a part of our little corner of the internet that we like to call Locked On Grizzlies. I got to tell you, I was ready to come on this show and just completely blast the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis was losing to the San Antonio Spurs by 10 at the end of the first quarter, and I was posting on X at Joe Mullinax, fart memes, and I was talking about how excited I am for this show. And wouldn't you know it, the Memphis Grizzlies, it was a tale of two halves, more specifically, a tale of two quarters, because as poorly as Memphis played in the first frame against the San Antonio Spurs, they blew the doors off San Antonio in the third. So the start of the first half, not particularly strong for the Memphis Grizzlies. The start of the third quarter, the second half, 36-27 win for Memphis, and that, plus a couple of point advantage from the second quarter makes all the difference. The Grizzlies and Spurs play equal, essentially, in the final frame, and Memphis gets a 1-point victory at home, a desperately needed win, arguably the best win of the season. I would say arguably because this was a San Antonio team that had Victor Wembanyama. He scores 30 points in 21 minutes. It was pretty clear there was some sort of minutes restriction on Wembanyama. He did not play to close the contest. Would the game look different if Wembanyama, who did play in the game, if he had closed the game? Maybe. But Memphis Grizzlies fans will happily chime in and say, could the game have looked different if Zach Edey were on the court? Or what about Cedric Howard or Brandon Clark or John Morant? Memphis can go down the list a little bit more deeply than the San Antonio Spurs can. And I do think that point is well taken. Nobody is weeping for anybody when it comes to injury issues. The Memphis Grizzlies certainly know that firsthand. And the Memphis Grizzlies, despite it all, find a way to knock off the San Antonio Spurs in a big victory for this team, one that was desperately needed. Memphis Grizzlies had their own returner in this contest. Victor Wembanyama shouldn't get all the headlines and the shine coming back from injury. For the Memphis Grizzlies, Vince Williams Jr. gets back into the mix, and boy, did he make a major difference. First off, he makes a major difference in the first half for a Memphis Grizzlies team that played poorly, especially in that first quarter. When Vince Williams Jr. came in the contest, his impact was noticeable, and his impact shines through in his plus 15 for the game in 22 minutes played. There were other starters like Jalen Wells who played not so well, 2 for 11 from the field, and Jalen Wells was a minus 17 as a starter in the contest. Vince Williams Jr., a plus 15. That was the best number for anybody coming off the bench. And he looked the part, not just because of his shooting. Don't get me wrong, shooting 4 for 6 from beyond the arc certainly helps. But it was his rebounding, 6 boards. It was his assist making, 5 assists to just 1 turnover. He looked the part of the versatile combo wing that can do a variety of things on both ends of the court, and with Cedric Howard, with the likes of Ja Morant once again out, a starting lineup that featured Jaren Jackson Jr., who we'll talk more about later on in the show, G.G. Jackson, Jalen Wells, Jock Landale, and Cam Spencer. Somebody on the bench was going to have to do something to help this team win. And usually you point at Asante Aldama. It was not Santi in this game. 9 rebounds was nice, but 1 for 6 from 3, 3 for 10 from the field. A big block to close out the game for Santi. 2 blocks in total, but he had the game-clinching block of a San Antonio Spurs shot with seconds remaining. So Santi wasn't all bad, and we're not going to, berate or focus on Santi in this particular edition of the show. Not his best night offensively, but he did make some plays. Vince Williams Jr. did a lot of good things as a glass eater, as an offensive creator, as a shot maker. He has to be somebody that opposing teams have to respect. He doesn't have to be a 20-point-a-night scorer, but he has to be a viable offensive option if he's going to remain in the mix with this team if and when they ever get healthy, right? But Vince Williams Jr. for me really popped because it was him who really sparked the energy coming off of the bench. It was him that allowed for the team to hang around and hang around. And then when things got popping a little bit, thanks to players like Cam Spencer, who we'll talk more about here in a moment, in the second half, Vince Williams Jr. had the ability to keep the team in a position to take advantage of that run, as opposed to being down by 20 or some points. And no matter what the Grizzlies did, given how far back they had fallen, given how banged up they were in terms of the injury report, they weren't going to be able to catch up. So Vince Williams Jr., one of my stars of the game. Another one of my stars of the game, Cam Spencer. I just mentioned him a moment ago. And this guy is fascinating to me. Here is somebody who was the point guard in this game. And DeMichael and I have talked about this. We love Cam Spencer as a catch and shoot, catch rhythm 3 kind of guy. Going into the season, we were nervous about him as a point guard. DeMichael more so than me even. No need to be nervous about that. Again, nobody is pretending that he is some elite facilitator of the basketball on a night in, night out basis. But when you're able to shoot 3 for 8 from 3, 8 of 15 overall from the field, you play 30 minutes in the game, put up 21 points with 8 rebounds as a guard and 8 assists, 0 turnovers. Turnovers are going to be a major focus of later on in the program when we talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. 0 turnovers, 8-0. Cam Spencer played one of his best games of the season, in my opinion. You know why I'm confident enough to say that he played one of his best games of the season? Because you know who he played against? De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle, one of the best backcourts in the NBA. He played against a duo that, especially in the case of Fox, were able to be in a position to take advantage of the close game, try to close things out, Fox being one of the most clutch players in the NBA. Fox had a terrible night. 4 of 18 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3, but he did some impressive things down the stretch. A chase down block of Jalen Wells, who, as we mentioned, didn't have the best game, leading that into a floater on the other side that gave the Spurs the lead. It felt like Fox was going to be that guy again, even though he didn't have the best showing overall for the night. But Cam Spencer was the dude, knocking down clutch bucket after clutch bucket in the fourth quarter. He's not afraid of the moment. He is a competitor. And that fascinates me because this is somebody that we've talked about before on this show, makes less money over the next 3 years, not even including this year, 4 years total, if you want to do that, including this year, makes less money over his entire life of his contract than Luke Kennard is making in one season in Atlanta right now. I'm a Luke Kennard guy. If Luke Kennard is playing the minutes that Cam Spencer played tonight, the Memphis Grizzlies lose. Cam Spencer was a key component to that contest for the Memphis Grizzlies. And other guys did some really impressive things. I thought Jock Landale, as much as I like to berate and belittle Jock Landale, 19 points, 9 rebounds, he deserves a shout out, especially on the offensive glass. I thought that you saw some good things at times from Christian Koloko, right? Obviously on his second 10-day contract, unlikely he sticks around because the Grizzlies would have to waive somebody, move on from somebody. I thought that he did some good things. Cam Spencer and Vince Williams Jr. are the men of the match for me. You might be wondering, Joe, why don't you say the guy that had 21 points, 9 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 steals, 5 stocks in Jaren Jackson Jr.? How come he is not your man of the match? He had a good game, don't get me wrong, but it's starting to feel like a choose-your-own-adventure book when it comes to watching Jaren Jackson Jr. play basketball. I'm going to explain what I mean coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and they always feel different here on Locked On Grizzlies. If you're an everydayer, you know we got to get down on a Friday. FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and to make a move before the window closes. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the National Basketball Association. You've heard us talk about the Everydayer Club. You've heard us talk about the Everydayer Club here on the podcast. We're very excited about this. Thanks for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. If you haven't already done it, go check out our new Everydayer Club ad-free audio feed for Locked On Grizzlies, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Plus, you get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server. It includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. Again, we're going to do our best to get in there as soon as possible. My goal is to start with the Phoenix Suns game on Wednesday night. Hop in there. Let's talk about the game as it's going on. Make sure you are going and signing up right now at lockedongrizzlies.supercast.com. That's lockedongrizzlies.supercast.com and sign up today. Become a member of the Everydayer Club. Somebody that should be a member of the Everydayer Club is Jaren Jackson Jr. And Jaren Jackson Jr., I'm confident that you enjoy Locked On Grizzlies. How can you not enjoy the beautiful baritone of my lovely voice? How can you not gaze upon this mug and think that guy knows freaking basketball? Or at the very least, clearly has a podcast. Look at me, right? But Jaren, you're not listening. So let me try to say it in a different way. We're going to choose our own adventure, the way that you want to interpret the way that Jaren Jackson Jr.'s game against the San Antonio Spurs went. Let's say you want to start on a positive note, right? You want to be a positive Patty. You want to be somebody that's going down the turn of happiness street. Jaren Jackson Jr. at times in that contest against the Spurs looked every bit of the all-star that the Memphis Grizzlies know he can be. 3 blocks, 2 steals. That's 5 stocks. That is defensive, all-defensive team contributor. That is defensive player of the year, alumni-worthy impact on the defensive end of the court. And Jaren was a plus 21 in this contest, leading all players for the Memphis Grizzlies. He was a plus 21, and that was the most impactful performance of anyone that logged any minute in the contest at all across the Grizzlies or the Spurs. So while I hyped up Vince Williams Jr. and Cam Spencer as the men of the match, that is not to say that Jaren played poorly. And it was also nice to see head coach Tuomas Isolo allow for Jaren to play 36 minutes because you know what? He freaking had to. Okay? He had to play. If you're serious about trying to compete, sometimes your best players got to play a lot of minutes. And kudos to Isolo. That's exactly what transpired. Jaren had a really good game in a lot of different ways. But if you are an everydayer of Locked On Grizzlies, you already know where I'm going with this. There is a glaring hole in Jaren Jackson Jr.'s game that continues to infuriate me, and that is his issue with turnovers. Jaren committed 6 turnovers against the San Antonio Spurs. 6. The Grizzlies as a whole, as a team, had 20 turnovers. So do the math on that. 10 players logged minutes for the Memphis Grizzlies. 20 total turnovers were committed. Jaren was 6 of them. Now, Jaren played the most minutes of anybody. That's important to point out. The next closest guy was Cam Spencer at 30. But the fact remains that a forward, a big, Jaren Jackson Jr. had 6 turnovers. That can't happen. And the thing about Jaren is it happens in a lot of different ways. It's an offensive foul on a lazy screen. It's a foul away from the ball. It's a pass that is so ill-advised. And more often than not, these are not the times that he should be making the kinds of passes that he should be making in terms of, as I've talked about numerous times, his dribble penetration off isolation opportunities on the perimeter. The defense is collapsing on him and his eyes are not up. He's trying to force to get to his left hand, or he's trying to find ways to work around and draw contact as opposed to making the pass to the perimeter to an open guy for 3. Or a guy who is slightly open who can make the next pass to the corner for a great shot from there. But Jaren doesn't do that consistently. Instead, it is far more likely that he is going to commit a untimely, ungodly turnover. And that almost bit the Grizzlies in the butt against the San Antonio Spurs. So again, when you look at Jaren at this stage of his career, it's a choose your own adventure story. Because you can have your narrative fed into both ways. Now, the one space that it doesn't really work in this particular contest is the rebounding, right? There's a lot of folks out there that hate how poor of a rebounder Jaren is. Well, guess what? Jaren was tied for the lead on the team in this contest with Landale and Aldama, 9 rebounds. Jaren hit the glass against the Spurs, at least more than he normally does. So you can't knock Jaren for that in this game. My focus with Jaren is he someone who is going to raise the ceiling of the Grizzlies offense in particular? We know what he's capable of defensively. There's no question there. When Jaren's locked in, he's one of the best defensive players in the entire league. And he showed consistency on that end in this game. And he knocked down 5 threes, man. He deserves credit for that. That's important. That helped the Grizzlies win. But he also lost 6 possessions for this Grizzlies team. And I can't stand the idea of a team that struggles at times offensively, can't get into a rhythm, making costly turnovers. Sometimes you're going to try to make a play, things happen. You're not going to have a game where there's 0 turnovers, right? But the Grizzlies had 20 turnovers and the Spurs had 14. San Antonio's +6 in possessions there. +6. That easily could have turned the tide if one of those possessions becomes 1 extra bucket. Now, the Grizzlies out-rebound the Spurs 61-50, and DeMichael talks about the rebounding a lot. So you can't just harp on the bad without acknowledging that the Grizzlies had 61 rebounds. They win that battle. The Grizzlies find a way to be more aggressive on the offensive glass. They earn some possessions back there. That is important context. When you have 17 offensive rebounds compared to 13 offensive rebounds for the Spurs, you have a possession advantage in that space. But being smarter with how possessions are handled and being more aware of where you are in the court and in the rhythm of a game, those are all things. The reason that it frustrates me so much when I go down that path of Jaren analysis is, at least to my eye, that's stuff that's controllable. You can control how you react to what a defense is doing to you. You can control how you interact with somebody 94 feet from the basket on the other end of the court after a missed rebound opportunity. You can control how you set your screens and how you set your feet and how you angle your body to try to give the most space possible for the ball handler off of your pick or your screen without putting out your leg or sticking out your hip and creating increased contact. It seems like a loss of focus at times. And that is where I struggle with Jaren's turnover issues. It's a mixed bag, and he's not able to be what the team needs him to be to take that next step, that secondary creator off the bounce, finding those open shooters on a more consistent basis. Jaren played really well against the Spurs. but the turnovers brought him below Cam and Vince Williams Jr. for me. What say you? Do you agree with that analysis coming out of Grizzlies Spurs of Jaren Jackson Jr.? Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. Let me know in the comments. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to close out this edition of the show talking about another basketball game. The Grizzlies play Wednesday night against the Phoenix Suns. We'll talk about that to close out this edition of the show. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? But that's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I was shocked that Rocket Money showed me how much I was paying for subscriptions like to the Washington Post that I completely forgot about. It's already saved me money, and I love how it tracks those subscriptions, helps me cancel them there in the app. With just a few taps, you don't have to hunt down customer service numbers. Rocket Money handles it all. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge, but with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections, no drafts, no waiting. Just pick more or less and play your way. It makes watching games more engaging, especially when following individual player performances. And the flexibility with options like Flex Play is a lot of fun, where you can still get paid even if one pick misses. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. We're closing out this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for being with me. It is I, Joe Mullinax, happy to be your host for this show. DeMichael Cole, my co-host, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, taking the next couple of days focusing on his coverage for the CA. I appreciate DeMichael helping me out and keeping us going here on Locked On Grizzlies here in the new year. Glad to be back and glad to be looking at another basketball game. Again, it's true of bad performances and it's true of good ones, right? After a bad game, you can always say, hey, the good thing about the NBA is we got another game coming up. After a good game, you want to keep those good vibes and good energy, mojo moments going. And that's exactly what happens for Memphis against the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday night. Really big game again there in FedEx Forum for the Grizzlies. The injury list is long but distinguished. We already know that. Ja Morant was questionable going into the game against the Spurs, then was downgraded to doubtful, then was ruled out. We'll have to see how things go for him in the Suns game. Again, maybe they decide to keep him out of the front end of the back-to-back, give him one more day to get healthy, and put him back in there against Phoenix. Who knows, right? We'll have to see what happens with Cedric Howard and his ankle. Likely to be in the mix, depending on how bad the ankle injury was. There was no set medical update out from the team on Cedric Howard, at least not of this recording. So fingers crossed. Again, I might have just jinxed us, but there's reason for optimism that it's not a long-term issue. The Grizzlies have a longer injury list than the Suns. Jalen Green is really the biggest name that is on that list for Phoenix. And obviously, the way the Suns have been playing of late, not necessarily missing him all that much. They've won 2 of their last 3. They went on a 4-game winning streak recently. Over the last 8 games, they're 6-2. So the Phoenix Suns are playing some pretty good basketball, but they are coming off that noted, slightly viral defeat at the hands of Kevin Durant and the Houston Rockets. In that game, okay, Devin Booker leads Phoenix with 27 points. That really shouldn't surprise us. Book is a really strong shooter and scorer of the ball. Always has been, always will be. But something that stands out to me is old friend Dillon Brooks. And Dillon Brooks gets a lot of credit for things like developing culture, having a competitive mentality, being a hard-nosed player night in and night out. And he deserves that credit. You'll never hear me talk negatively about Dillon Brooks in that space. But the reason that I was okay with Dillon Brooks being moved on from with the Memphis Grizzlies is there's times where when he should redirect his energy offensively, he's not capable of doing so. And as good as Dillon Brooks has played for Phoenix at times this season, against Houston, it was not really there. 1 for 6 from 3, but he doesn't lean into his offensive facilitation. The Phoenix Suns only had 23 assists in the contest, and they didn't have their best shooting night. But Dillon Brooks only had 2 assists. And Dillon is somebody that the Suns count on to be a malleable piece around whoever they put him next to because of his defensive acumen. So Dillon Brooks not doing what the team needed him to do against the Houston Rockets didn't necessarily cost them the game. I think you could argue that struggles elsewhere cost them the game. But Dillon is coming into this one looking to make a statement on behalf of himself and his team against his old mates in the Memphis Grizzlies from a couple of seasons ago now, obviously. I'm sure it still hurts. I'm sure it still stings, and Dillon has the mentality to want to pass that pain back on to the franchise that moved on from him. How Memphis can play into that is a key to this game. Do you allow for Dillon Brooks to have the opportunity to get hot? Because if he gets hot in FedEx Forum, it's going to be hard to come back from that. That is going to give Dillon some pretty impressive superpowers, at least for short stints of time. But Dillon is very much capable of having another 1 for 6 from 3 performance. Dillon is a good inside the arc scorer. He was 7 for 15 overall in that game against Houston. So that means he was 6 for 9 inside the arc. So do you do your best to try to make Dillon be that 3-point marksman and keep him out there? Devin Booker is going to get his. But there's limitations to what this Phoenix team can do beyond him. You can also expect another former Grizzly, Grayson Allen, to not shoot 0 for 6 and 0 for 4 from 3 the way that he did against the Houston Rockets. The Grizzlies' defense has improved in recent weeks, but it's highly likely that Grayson Allen gets going a little bit. So a major key for me in this game is looking at the Suns. They don't really have anybody that can defend Jaren Jackson Jr. on an up and down the court basis. Maybe Ryan Dunn off the bench, but even he is going to be undersized. There's lots of mismatches there for Jaren Jackson Jr. to take advantage of. And I also think that the fact that the Grizzlies now have multiple wings defensively that they can throw at somebody like Devin Booker can at least give a different look, different length, different hedges and coverages. It can make life a little bit more complicated for Devin than perhaps it has been against the Grizzlies in recent days and weeks. Obviously, Phoenix lost a pretty important game earlier in the year. Ja Morant knocks down a game-winning bucket as time comes to a close. Phoenix probably hasn't forgotten that. I would expect the Suns to come in. They are rested. They did not have to play on Tuesday. So the Grizzlies are on the second night of a back-to-back. It's a home and then at home again. So the Grizzlies are sleeping in their own beds and all that sort of stuff. Again, maybe we'll see Cedric Howard. Maybe we'll see Ja Morant. We'll have to see as the injury report comes out. I would lean towards them not playing. But again, especially in the case of Ja, he was doubtful going into the game. So maybe, or questionable to start, then downgraded to doubtful, then out. So maybe they just decided, hey, it's back-to-back. We'll see how he's feeling on Wednesday. If Memphis can get a little bit more depth, it gives them a better shot. But the fact that the Phoenix Suns are in a spot where they are, the team looked to as a favorite in the contest really shouldn't be that surprising to anybody. It's kind of a toss-up, I guess. But Phoenix being a slight favorite, not too shocking. And Memphis has a chance to win. If they play the way they did against the Spurs, they certainly have a shot because Phoenix is not San Antonio. That was a pretty good win for the Grizzlies. Thank you so much once again for being with us here on Locked On Grizzlies, and thank you for making us your listen each and every day, your first listen, or first watch each and every time that an episode drops. Make sure you're checking out our next show. We'll talk Grizzlies Suns, and we'll look ahead, maybe some trade conversations. I know DeMichael on a recent episode talked about the small guard problem, what Trae Young, Ja Morant, LaMelo Ball, all these things floating around in the NBA could potentially mean for that archetype of point guard. Maybe we dabble in some trade conversation, and Memphis may having to make a choice at some point about what direction they're going. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing. Make sure you're following Locked On Grizzlies so you get all the latest episodes. Follow me on X at Joe Mullinax and find everything Locked On Grizzlies there. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Grizzlies ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to this link right now, lockedongrizzlies.supercast.com. That's lockedongrizzlies.supercast.com, and become an Everydayer. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on this edition of the show. It is much appreciated, as always. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen NBA Game Night over on Locked On NBA. Thanks for being with me on this episode. We will catch you right back here post Grizzlies Suns. Until then, I'm Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. Have a great day. Catch you next time. See you.